At midnight, 5 college students were drunkenly celebrating in the middle of the road when suddenly a pickup truck came speeding toward them. The driver swerved hard to avoid them, but he lost control, broke through the guardrail, and the front of the truck dangled precariously off the cliff's edge. The students sobered instantly and rushed forward. Teddy leaned against the window and saw that the driver was still breathing. He hurried to pull the door, but realized it was locked. As the pickup slid further downward, they desperately grabbed the tail of the truck, but the vehicle was far too heavy, and the angle of suspension was dangerously steep. Under their horrified eyes, it slowly slid toward the cliff's edge and finally plunged into the bottomless bay, along with the driver. Faced with this sudden tragedy, they were thrown into panic and chaos. Teddy tried to stay calm, telling everyone not to panic, and volunteered to get the phone from the car to call the police. But the tension didn't ease. Stevie completely broke down, saying that her friends could all afford expensive lawyers, but she might end up as the scapegoat because she was poor. Danica quickly tried to calm her, insisting this wasn't a crime but a tragic accident. She reminded them that this road was known as Death's Bend, where countless accidents had already happened. Just then, Teddy returned and told everyone the police and ambulance were on their way, but they had to leave immediately. But Ava and Stevie strongly objected, insisting that staying at the scene was the only responsible choice. Otherwise, it would look like they were running away and could make things worse. Teddy kept trying to calm them, suggesting they should all go to the police station to give their statements, but Ava shook her head, saying the driver might still be alive. They had to go down and rescue him. Milo pointed out that the cliff was far too steep. There was no way to climb down. Saving him was impossible. Reason and morality clashed at this moment. Finally, Danica could no longer bear it and turned away angrily. After a brief hesitation, Stevie followed her. Ava wanted to save the driver, but in the end she was forced to leave with them. At that moment, they all knew the wheel of fate had shifted off course. On the drive back, the 5 of them sat in the car in suffocating silence, each trapped in their own thoughts, no one daring to speak. But Danica didn't drive them to the police station. Instead, she pulled straight into Teddy's house. No explanation, no argument, as if everything had already been arranged. Teddy got out and told them that his father, Grant, a powerful local real estate developer, would take care of everything, but only if they all stayed absolutely silent. Each of them was forced to respond, some nodding reluctantly, others hesitating, but in the end, they all agreed to the silence. Time passed, and a year slipped by quietly. Last year, the friends gathered at Danica and Teddy's engagement party, witnessing what seemed to be a solid relationship. No one expected that only a year later, they would gather again for another engagement party, still for Danica, but this time everything was different. After breaking up with Teddy, Danica wasted no time before quickly throwing herself into a new relationship. During the gift opening, she picked up a card with no signature. Inside was only one sentence: "I know what you did last summer." The words struck Danica like lightning, shaking her to her core. In the kitchen, Danica showed the card to her friends, accusing Teddy of being the one behind it, saying he only did it to torment her. She angrily called him petty and immature, admitting this was the very reason they broke up. Her friends questioned her, asking why she was so certain. Danica coldly replied that only they and Teddy's father knew about that night's secret.
Somehow connected to the person in the car.
Sam Cooper? Well, I know you all looked him up too.
Yeah, but he didn't have anyone, no family. None that I could find anyway.
Which honestly makes the whole thing even sadder. What if someone saw us? What if someone saw what happened?
Perfect. So either I'm being blackmailed or my ex is trying to ruin my life.
But when they confronted Teddy with the card, they found him equally shocked and confused, even more furious and terrified than they were. Teddy firmly denied it was him, angrily driving them out. The friends looked at each other, unable to confirm the truth. Was the card Teddy's revenge, or was there someone else behind it? The secret remained unsolved, becoming more mysterious and terrifying. That night, Danica's new fiancé Wyatt felt someone near the pool. He cautiously walked over to check, but saw nothing. Just as he turned to leave, a sharp harpoon suddenly shot out of the darkness and pierced his chest. He struggled desperately, only to be struck again in the abdomen by a second harpoon. At that moment, a mysterious killer in a black fisherman's raincoat appeared, wielding a hook, and delivered the final blow. Meanwhile, upstairs, Danica was relaxing in the bathtub, completely unaware that death had already descended downstairs. When she finished her bath and walked down, she was greeted by a horrifying sight. Above the fireplace, a message was scrawled in blood-red letters. "You cannot erase the past." Her scream pierced the night. Soon the police got involved, posting patrol cars outside her house to prevent another tragedy. But no security could erase the fear in their hearts. The next day, the 5 of them gathered again, forced to face the truth. Was Wyatt's death just an accident, or was it revenge aimed at them? The bloody warning and the curse written in plain sight clearly weren't coincidences. What made it even more disturbing was that Wyatt hadn't been part of the accident at all, yet he was the first to die. These doubts pushed them into deeper fear and confusion. Some guessed it might have been a random attack, but that idea was quickly dismissed. The bloody words left at the scene were a clear provocation, pointing directly to their secret. So the question became unavoidable. Besides the 5 of them, who else could possibly know the truth? Ava pressed Stevie, asking if her new friends knew anything, but she swore she had never told a soul. Then someone brought up Ava's new friend, the girl she had met on the plane, Tyler. Milo pointed out that Tyler was not just an ordinary passerby, but a host of a true crime blog, with content focused on murders and gore. Danica immediately found her channel, and on the screen, Tyler was previewing her next story. Tyler claimed she was going to talk about an old case from 1997, where a group of teenagers thought they could cover up the truth about a killing, only to be hunted down one by a fisherman in a raincoat, wielding a terrifying hook, and the nightmare had all started with an anonymous note. These details made their spines tingle, because the note in Danica's hand was also an anonymous warning. A terrifying thought slowly crept into their minds. Could Tyler know their secret? But Ava quickly denied it.
Tyler, a random girl I introduced myself to on a plane, came all the way to Southport because she knows exactly what we did last summer so she could kill us all for her podcast. That makes no sense.
I don't think we should pull it out.
Look, I'm with Ava. I don't think it's this podcast girl, but the notes, the hook. There's a lot of similarities to 1997.
I think it's time we start digging into our local lore.
Ava later met Tyler, who was thrilled to see her, because living alone in the small town made her feel isolated, and now she finally had someone willing to accompany her in her explorations. So they began what Tyler called a local tour, starting at the Bay Club, a place that had been renovated into an upscale venue. But Tyler emphasized that it wasn't just a club, it was the site of a terrifying event. Almost 30 years ago, it had been one of the bloodiest locations targeted by the fisherman killer. As she explained, she showed off t-shirts she had made and even sold online, turning the old tragedy into a business for thrill seekers. As the story unfolded, she mentioned a young woman named Julie who returned home after graduating from college, received an anonymous card, and soon a series of murders followed. And on that note were the exact words, "I know what you did last summer." Ava asked about the fate of the survivors, and Tyler explained that Julie did not die, but became one of only 2 survivors, and now worked as a teacher at Hoffman School. She had tried to contact Julie for an interview, but only received a cold rejection email. At that moment, Tyler went upstairs alone, saying she was looking for more clues. Ava grew uneasy and immediately messaged her friends, telling them to come quickly. She suspected Tyler's behavior was suspicious, but the instant she sent the message, a shadow appeared in the hallway. A mysterious figure cloaked in a fisherman's outfit emerged, holding a sharp weapon and slowly closing in. At first, Ava thought it was just one of Tyler's pranks. A bloody struggle instantly broke out. Ava grabbed a kitchen knife and fought back desperately, stabbing the attacker in the chaos. She gathered her courage and opened the door, only to be terrified to see that the killer had vanished without a trace. Soon, she reunited with Tyler, but the danger wasn't over. Suddenly, a mechanism above was triggered, and a heavy iron cage dropped down, trapping Ava inside. She screamed for Tyler to get help, but the doors were already locked, forcing Tyler to crawl toward the attic in search of a way out. But the killer came after her again, and in a panic, Tyler begged for mercy, claiming she was a fan, but the figure showed no pity, swinging the hook mercilessly. Meanwhile, Ava twisted the screws on the cage and finally broke free. In her last moments, Tyler tore off the killer's mask, her eyes wide with shock and despair because she recognized the face beneath. Just as Ava escaped, Stevie arrived and opened the door to pull her out. But the next second, Tyler's lifeless body crashed down from above, her blood and the shadow of death drenching the scene. The police quickly intervened. The next day, Ava found Julie, introduced herself as being from Southport, and bluntly stated that she had been attacked by a killer in a fisherman's raincoat wielding a hook. She had fought desperately and survived, but her friend was murdered, and within just 2 days, there had already been 2 victims. Even more chilling, it had all started with an anonymous note, exactly like what Julie had experienced years ago. Ava pleaded for Julie's help, hoping to gain experience and courage from a survivor. But Julie coldly responded with one question: "What did you do last summer?" The words cut like a blade, piercing into Ava's deepest secret. Julie made it clear that Grant would make the police cover up the truth to protect the town's tourism. They had refused to listen to her back then, and they wouldn't now. She swore never to return to that nightmare. But she pointed out the truth. These were not random killings, but personal revenge. Against such relentless pursuit, there was no escape. The only way out was to uncover who the killer was and stop them first. At a town hall meeting, Chief Roberts announced increased police patrols for the rest of the holiday to calm fears. But residents demanded to know how they should explain the horror of yesterday to their children. Roberts brushed it off, claiming it was only the self-harm of a troubled young woman and unrelated to anything else. His words sparked outrage, and Ava openly challenged him.
Alternative, Grant? 2 nights ago, a man was murdered in his fiance's home.
And yesterday, before Tyler was killed, I was chased through Bayside House by someone in a fisherman slicker, carrying a hook. Okay? And last 4th of July...
If you're referring to the young man had the accident, he was a drug addict, drove a stolen car off the road. Now that's tragic, of course, but these are completely unrelated events.
Are you really just gonna sit there and pretend like nothing like this has ever happened in Southport before?
You should listen to her. This isn't the first time there's been violence like this in Southport, and you know it.
Hello, Ray.
Is that your boss? Yeah.
I assume you're referring to what happened to you back in 1997?
That's right.
Southport is a very different town now than it was then. And I'm afraid I just don't see a connection between a home invasion, a tourist suicide, and something that happened to you nearly 3 decades ago.
Give me a break. She said she was being chased by someone wearing a slicker. Now you need to handle this. It's not going to stop.
But Grant didn't give a direct response. Instead, he repeated that the police would protect everyone, and even invoked Pastor Judah, redirecting the issue toward prayer and spiritual comfort. He encouraged people to go to church, saying the pastor's doors were always open. On the surface, the townsfolk were reassured, and the tension faded. But afterward, Stevie couldn't hold back any longer and confessed her secret to Ray. She knew it was impossible to cover up with silence anymore. She outright said things weren't as simple as they seemed, and they must find out who the deceased Sam was connected to. Ava remembered Julie's warning. Clues were often tied to the dead. Every person might hide a connection, and that could be the key to solving the mystery. At that moment, Stevie finally admitted the truth. They had even gone to Julie before. Ray's face fell instantly because Julie was not a stranger, but his ex-wife. As they argued, Danica suggested turning to a medium for answers, while Teddy insisted they should just leave town. But in the end, they all agreed there was only one real lead: the pickup truck that had gone over the cliff. Grant had claimed it was a stolen vehicle, and if that were true, there had to be an official record, and finding the owner could reveal the killer's identity. So they went to the impound lot to get the registration information. When the staff asked questions, they had no license plate number to give, and could only make excuses about a terrible accident where they lost the documents. After much pleading, the staff finally relented and asked if they remembered the model. Ava quickly said it was a 1990s Dodge pickup, brought in after the crash on July 4th last year. The staff checked the records and quickly gave the answer: a 1998 Dodge Ram pickup, confirmed to have been logged into storage on July 5th of last year. But the next words froze them to the core. The truck was registered under the name Judah, and Judah was none other than the town pastor. The revelation struck with a heavy contrast. The figure who symbolized sanctuary was directly tied to a vehicle of death. Following the lead, they went to the cemetery, hoping to uncover more clues. There, Danica and the others were stunned to see a fresh bouquet of flowers placed on Sam's grave, proving someone had visited recently, which contradicted the belief that he had no family. Their doubts deepened. Who was secretly mourning him? They hurried to question the caretaker, but he only gave a vague answer, claiming too many people came and went to be sure. Left with no choice, they asked him to pull the security footage. However, just as the surveillance footage was about to be retrieved, an accident suddenly happened. A shadow flashed by, and a sharp blade slit the caretaker's throat from behind. Blood splattered on the spot, and the hard drive was destroyed by the killer. Teddy, waiting impatiently outside, decided to check the monitoring room himself when no result came. But in that moment, Danica was left alone in the graveyard, and from the darkness, the figure in the fisherman's coat began to creep closer. Her heart pounded, and in panic she stumbled into a warehouse. The place was dim, and she held her breath, shrinking into a corner, hoping the shadows could hide her. But the cold footsteps drew closer, heavy and rhythmic on the floor, like death approaching step by step. She curled tighter, praying not to be seen, but those cold eyes inevitably found her. The killer dragged her out and slowly raised the gleaming hook. Just as death was about to strike, Teddy burst in and interrupted the blow. But the killer moved with extreme speed, and seeing the situation turn, disappeared into the night. That night, Ray confronted Julie. demanding to know why she had pushed Ava to hunt the killer, angrily accusing her of leading the young people to ruin. Julie replied coldly that she had only told Ava the truth, that the only path to survival was to find the killer first, or else there would never be an escape. Their conversation was filled with tension, revealing the scars in their hearts that would never heal. Danica's brush with death left everyone shaken, and her friends decided to stay with her for the night and leave everything for the morning. Late at night, Milo went to the car to get a charger, but when he returned, he found the house door locked. He circled to the other side, calling for Ava, and at that moment, a cold rope slipped from the shadows and tightened around his neck. He struggled instinctively, clawing at the rope with both hands, but the suffocation spread quickly through his body, and within moments his strength ebbed away and darkness consumed him. Inside, Ava heard the noise and pulled open the curtains, only to see Milo's car slowly driving away. Worried, she called him, but no one answered. Moments later, she received a short text message. Milo claimed he needed to take a drive to clear his head. The next day, Ava and her friends went to the church looking for clues. They met a church staff member who recognized them as Stevie's friends and comforted them with sympathy. Danica excused herself to use the bathroom, then began searching for clues. Soon, she found a photo of Judah and Sam together in Judah's notebook. At that moment, Pastor Judah appeared, and Ava quickly approached him, pretending she just wanted to unburden her worries. During their talk, she overheard a detail from the staff that last year someone in the church had also died in a car accident. Ava's heart tightened, and she immediately texted Danica to warn her that Judah was heading toward the office. Moments later, Judah pushed open the door, saw the notebook open on the desk, and instantly realized someone had been there. He turned his gaze toward the wardrobe, where Danica held her breath in hiding. However, Judah did not expose her. Instead, he looked meaningfully at the wardrobe for a moment, then turned and left. Ava and Danica rushed to tell Chief Roberts what they had found, hoping the police would step in to investigate. Roberts nodded on the surface, saying he would talk to his men, so Ava and Danica sat down to wait, believing for once they might have help. But Roberts went straight to report everything to Grant. Meanwhile, Teddy sat alone in the steam-filled sauna. Through the mist, he saw a sentence slowly appear on the glass. "You're next." Sweat and steam poured down his face, and the small room suddenly turned into a death trap. Soon, Ava and Danica realized they were not being protected, but locked inside the station. At the same time, Teddy was drinking at the dock when he noticed a shadow inside the wine cellar, so he went in to check, but found nothing suspicious. However, just as he was about to leave, a mannequin behind him suddenly stabbed him. Teddy swung back with a punch, his eyes showing not fear but a glint of wild excitement. Blades pierced into his body again and again, blood spreading across him, but he gritted his teeth, slammed his head into the killer, and kept fighting. Severely injured, he dragged his staggering body, desperately crawling out of the wine cellar, calling for help toward his parents outside. But the distance was too far, his voice too weak to reach them. In his despair, the killer attacked again, dragging him back into the darkness. Moments later, Grant pushed open the door and stepped out, only to see his son lying in a pool of blood, breathing weakly as his life slowly faded away. Grant lunged forward, his hands trembling as he pressed tightly against the wound on his son's chest. Yet in this tense and chaotic instant, a dark figure approached silently. The next second, a cold blade stabbed into Grant from behind. Before he could even let out a scream, he collapsed slowly in agony and despair. Both Grant and his son were killed on the spot, and the night outside their home was completely engulfed by bloodshed and tragedy. The next day, Ava and Danica were released, but they heard the police station suddenly order all personnel to rush to the pier. Ava and Danica immediately decided to follow. However, when they arrived at the scene, they were so frightened by the sight before them that their hearts turned cold. The two bodies hanging high on the pier were none other than Teddy and his father. Ray calmly advised them to leave immediately. Otherwise, they would only walk into a deadly trap. But Ava was worried about Milo's safety. Just then, they saw a familiar car parked nearby, and a glimmer of hope instantly ignited in their hearts. Ava rushed forward and shouted, but the next second she completely broke down. Milo in the car had already lost his life. Stevie held back her sorrow and tried to pull her away, but could only repeat over and over, "He's already gone." On the other side, the police also launched a raid. They broke into the church and ordered Judah to raise his hands, only to find that his eyes had been gouged out. Even more horrifying was that a sharp weapon was stuck in his chest, making him look like a nailed sacrifice. Meanwhile, Ava and the other two fled to the sea on a yacht, never expecting the killer to follow them. Yet when the killer took off their mask, Ava and Danica were completely stunned. The killer was actually Stevie. She then told her story. Her father leaving home and the family going bankrupt had once plunged her life into the depths. Although she later entered a treatment center to get rid of her bad habits and barely ushered in a so-called new life. But just when she thought she could start over, she found that the friend she trusted the most had abandoned her like garbage without hesitation. That betrayal completely ignited the hatred in her heart. During that dark period, she met Sam. On that night, Sam was worried that she would have a relapse, so he secretly drove Judah's pickup truck to pick her up. She didn't know that the person who died in the car accident was Sam until the body was washed ashore, and the truth of the matter was revealed. Only then did she realize the cruelest trick of fate. Pastor Judah knew everything, but he accepted hush money from Grant for the sake of money. To leave no hidden dangers, she personally dealt with Judah. For her, any obstacle had to be eliminated.
Sam was afraid I was gonna relapse. That's why he took Judah's car to come get me. I didn't know it was him until his body washed up. Judah was more than happy to take Grant's money in exchange for silence. I took care of him before we got to the docks. Can't have any loose ends.
So why are you telling us this now? Why don't you just kill us like the rest of them?
He took the person that I love the most away from me, and I needed you to know I did the same to you. We should have stayed. We could have helped him.
You left that night too, Stevie. Remember?
It was because Teddy said we were going to the police station!
So what's your plan? You're gonna kill us? Steal Teddy's boat? Is that gonna make you happy?
Yeah, pretty much.
A fight broke out in an instant, and screams and the sounds of struggle echoed in the cabin. Danica struggled desperately, and Ava tried her best to protect her, but they were completely unable to stop Stevie's out-of-control madness. At the critical moment, Ray's speedboat cut through the waves and arrived, with a gun in his hand, shouting to stop. Ava tried to use her last bit of reason to bring Stevie back, but Stevie's eyes were already filled with nothing but hatred. She would rather die than finish her revenge. She suddenly thrust a hook through Danica's chest. Blood splattered, and Danica's body was ruthlessly thrown into the cold sea. Immediately after, Stevie waved a weapon and pounced at Ava and Ray. A look of pain and determination flashed in Ray's eyes. He did not hesitate to pull the trigger, ending this bloody nightmare. On the way back, Ava picked up her phone and tremblingly called Julie to report her safety. She said she was safe and would return with Ray, but behind her words she couldn't understand. How had her former friend alone carried out a series of brutal killings? Upon hearing this, Julie immediately searched online and indeed found a photo of Stevie and Ray. Ray took Ava back to the bar. Ava whispered that Stevie must have endured unimaginable pain to embark on this path of destruction. Julie's words echoed in her ears. Trauma can change a person, even turn them into someone completely different. Ray, on the other hand, looked solemn and reminded Ava never to underestimate how far a person would go for revenge. Ava couldn't help but ask how he, who had experienced similar things, managed to move on. Ray shook his head and sighed, saying that kind of thing never truly goes away. It only forces you to learn to adapt. Then Ray handed her a clean shirt. Ava shook her head to refuse, seeming too exhausted to even change clothes. But the moment Ray turned around, Ava accidentally caught sight of the bandage on his arm. The familiar location of the wound made her realize the truth in an instant. Ray was the other killer. Fear instantly overwhelmed her. She quickly made an excuse to leave, only to find the door already locked from the outside. As she stumbled back in panic, Ray walked out slowly. By the time Julie arrived, Ava was already barely alive. Ray's true identity was finally revealed. He was the mastermind behind the series of killings. Stevie was merely his pawn. She longed for revenge, and Ray happened to provide her with the means to do so. He used his own past experiences, reenacting the bloody case from 1997 as a script. In his view, nothing could awaken the world's memory like a bloody murder. Those who once tried to cover up the truth now had to pay with their lives. Ray coldly claimed that Julie was the perfect scapegoat. Her years of unhealed trauma were easily packaged as a madwoman's excuse. With a little manipulation, all blame could be pushed onto Julie. Is it all finally over? Danica wasn't dead. She had washed ashore and was rushed to the hospital by passers-by. In the aftermath of the bloody massacre, Ava and Danica finally found a brief moment to catch their breath. In their mutual embrace, they seemed to rediscover a long-lost sense of security and reliance. But just as the atmosphere relaxed, Ava suddenly mentioned that Stevie was still alive. This news exploded like a thunderclap. After the incident, news media began reporting on the shocking nationwide serial killings. The police initially believed the local pastor was Stevie's accomplice, but later discovered she had actually been working with Ray. Even more shocking, Ray was once married to university professor Julie. Both were survivors of the serial killings 25 years ago. In front of the TV, Carla watched the news and sighed. People always want to kill that woman. The report finally mentioned that Ray was dead, but his accomplice Stevie was still at large. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Carla opened it to find it was actually Julie. The curse of Southport was far from over. In this place soaked in bloody history, every survivor could become the next Avenger. Every secret could trigger new killings. That cursed whisper, "I know what you did last summer," will continue to echo in the darkness, preying on the next soul burdened with guilt.